Hanna, hi.
Hi, Tina.
So nice to meet you, and
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, your story is very touching. You are a Jew, and your parents were gassed in Poland in 1942 in the Holocaust, and you were saved in 39. You went from Cologne after the Reichskristallnacht. You were brought with the Kindertransporter to England, and you were 7 years old back then, and you did not really know what is happening or why your parents brought you to this train and what will happen with them. So what went through your mind back then when you waved goodbye to your parents?
Well, up until the moment that I waved goodbye to my parents, I thought I was going on a nice trip because that's what they told me. And I think they told me that because I was a very spoilt only child with a very strong will, and they were desperate for me to get on the train and escape. And so they said I was going on a nice trip. And the moment that I turned around to wave goodbye, I saw that they were crying. And that was the moment of truth for me. The illusion of a nice trip disappeared.
Yeah. And yeah, you wrote that you kind of, when the wheels were starting to roll, that was the moment where your heart actually, the doors of your heart closed down. Yes. So how would you describe the person or the girl you became when you were raised in England with a stranger, with a family you didn't know actually?
Yeah.
What person did you became?
My way of coping with loss, the loss of my culture, my language, and most of all, the love of my parents, was to just put a heavy lid on what had gone before. It was as though what had happened in my life before didn't happen. And I formed this new person and I was trying hard to become a nice English little girl. And you always were very polite and very pleasant. But the problem was that there was stuff seething inside me, and it has an unfortunate habit of bursting out at the wrong time. One example is we used to get a daily newspaper, and because the war had started, there was a big picture of Hitler on the front page. And I actually remember getting a pair of scissors and stabbing the picture. And this was all the anger and bitterness coming out.
Yeah.
But I tried to bottle it up.
Yes, and to hide it Yeah, you also wrote that you did not like yourself very much, and that you were also up to trouble. So I think your longing for God became more and more obvious, or you wanted to free yourself from yourself?
Yes.
And then you also, how did you become the answers to the person you became? Why did you become like that, or what happened then? I read that you converted when Billy Graham came to town where you were. So how old were you then?
I was in my early 20s. Yeah, so it was a long time.
Yes.
I think I had come to the end of myself, and I had tried very hard to be pleasing to other people. And I had gone through that process, and I was pretty desperate. And when I heard that there was a solution for for my problem. You know, they'd taken years for me to be ready to listen to that. And it involved surrendering something of my own will, my own strong need to control everything, to surrender that. But I was teaching in England at the time, and I went to listen to Billy Graham out of curiosity because it was a new thing in England and everybody was talking about Billy Graham. So I did not go with the sense that I was going to find God. I went, you know,
just out of curiosity.
And it was very interesting because it was very American, and you know, we had some questions about America. And so I was, you know, on the one hand, I was a German refugee child who was very insecure, but on the other side, I was quite, you know, proudly looking on to this American thing as a British person. But when Billy Graham started to talk, it really reached deep down into my heart. And it was the first time that I had this very strong sense that Jesus had died for me on the cross. And all that stuff that I'd been trying to deal with by closing it down, I could kind of bring it up and give it to him there.
All this, also the surrender, it was just...
the bitterness and the hate.
That was inside you. Yeah, you were also reciting like from a prayer book, to know who you are and where you belong, you have to remember.
Yes.
So then, was that the beginning of like opening your heart and let the memories allow to come? Yeah.
You know, it was the first steps on this very long journey. And I'm just amazed. I'm 86. And I kind of filled with wonder how God so intimately and gently led me to gradually face the past.
Yeah, because there was a lot to face, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and then you started to, well, later on, you started to collect informations about Second World War, about the Holocaust, about your family. And you also wrote that you even had a book in the shelf where it was written about your family, but you had it in the shelf for many years before you even like took it and really read it. And confronted this horrible reality of your parents being gassed in Poland, in Kelmno, in the extermination camp. How did you forgave these the Germans, or how did you had the courage to keep on with this search? How could you do that?
You know, I think when I gave those awful things inside me to Jesus, I had this consciousness of what an awful person I was. Because, you know, those things, there's a lot of shame when we look inside ourselves. And it was such an amazing exchange to give it to him. I gradually had this courage to pursue this road of forgiveness. And I really felt that I had been deeply forgiven.
You needed it first for yourself, that you can be forgiven yourself before. Yeah.
And then I had this very strong sense that he was asking me to forgive what had been done to me. But I want to tell you a moment of truth. You know, one of the things that brought me low was this sense that I was a victim. And you know, believing I was a victim, I would interpret everything that happened to me quite unconnected to the Holocaust as people were against me, or I would interpret an incident, seeing myself as the victim, and it was a horrible bondage, really. And the amazing thing is that God reached that part within me in Germany.
Yeah.
He brought me to Germany in order to free me from my sense of victimhood.
Back to the place, yeah.
I was in a little group of Germans, Israeli Jews, and Israeli Arabs.
Wow.
And a German leader said, you know, we Germans know a lot about victimhood. After World War II, we really felt victims. And I want to tell you that God wants to take that from you, to heal you. And I would invite you, if you have a sense of victimhood, to step over this line and come to the other side of the room. And you know, there among Israelis and Arab Christians was this Jewish person, me. And I believe the whole room moved over out of our victimhood. And that was a huge step of freedom for me.
To come out of this,
yes,
this role of this,
And it kind of was a big step in being able to really forgive Germans.
And you went back to all these places, like where you lived, where your parents, and then you did this kind of symbolic funeral even, where you went with roses or with flowers to put down there. So you went all the way from Köln to Lodz to Poland.
Yes.
With this group, right?
Yes. A group of 8 friends came with my husband and I, and their hearts were very much in this journey. And we started from where it all began in Gmünd, and we went by train all the way to Lodz and then Chumno. And at the site of the incinerator where my parents' bodies were burned after being gassed, we together had a service taking bread and wine.
Wow. Yes. How was that feeling there? How was that?
You know, it was actually so dramatic. It's almost I couldn't feel anything. You know, I was there, but it was afterwards that I realized, in some ways, I reconnected with my parents. You know, I had closed off in the train, but it was in the forest in Chumno, where their bodies were burnt, that I reconnected with them. Because I could have a funeral for them that they never had.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing this with us, and many, many blessings.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for asking.
Thank you.